Alright, and we are back. Chapter 4, Invitations. This chapter is dedicated to Matt Brady, who is not an ugly Paul Rudd, but a lovely Paul Rudd. And to Paul Rudd! I love that guy. He's about to dream about Edith. Beau, not Matt Brady. Or Paul Rudd. In my dream it was very dark, and what dim light there was seemed to be radiating from Edith's skin. I couldn't see her face, just her back as she walked away from me, leaving me in the blackness. No matter how fast I ran, I couldn't catch up to her. No matter how loud I called, she never turned. I got more and more frantic to get to her, until that anxiety woke me. It was in the middle of the night, but I couldn't sleep again for what seemed like a very long time. After that, she was in my dreams nearly every night, but always on the edges, never within reach. The month that followed the accident was uneasy, tense, and at first embarrassing. I found myself the centre of attention for the rest of the week, which really sucked. Taylor Crowley was super annoying, following me around, coming up with different hypothetical ways to make it up to me. I tried to convince her that what I wanted more than anything else was for her to forget about it, especially since nothing actually happened to me. But she wouldn't give up. She found me between classes and sat at our now crowded lunch table. Michaela and Erica didn't seem to like that. They flashed more side-eye at her than they did at each other. Oh, she knows the term side-eye. Oh, that's nice. Which made me worry that I'd gained another unwelcome fan. Like being the new kid was the latest fad. Oh, no pleasing something, do I? Sorry about this. I'm just adjusting my legs. There. Okay, so no one was worried about Edith. No one followed her around or asked for her eyewitness account. I always included her in my version. She was the hero. She'd pulled me away and nearly been crushed too. But all anyone ever said was that they haven't even realised she was there until the van was pulled away. I wondered a lot about why no one else had noticed her standing so far away by her car before she was suddenly and impossibly saving my life. There was only one solution I could think of, and I didn't like it. It had to be because no one else was so aware of Edith. No one watched her the way I did. It was pathetic, kind of stalkerish. People avoided Edith the same way they usually did. The Cullens and the Hales sat at the same table they always sat at, not eating, talking only to each other. None of them ever glanced my way anymore. When Edith sat beside me in class, as far away as possible, like usual, she seemed totally unaware that I was sitting there next to her. Like my seat was empty. Only now and then, when her fists would suddenly ball up, skin stretched even whiter over her knuckles, did I wonder if she wasn't as entirely oblivious as she seemed. I wanted very much to continue our conversation from the hospital hallway, and the day after the accident I tried. She'd been so furious when we talked before. And even though I really wanted to know what had actually happened, and I thought I deserved the truth, I also knew I'd been pretty pushy, considering that she had just saved my life and all. I didn't think I'd thanked her properly. She was already in her chair when I got to biology. She didn't turn when I sat down, just kept staring straight ahead. She showed no sign that she knew I was there. "Hey, Edith," I said. She turned her head half an inch toward me. No, I was too far, that was probably a whole inch. But her eyes stayed focused on the blackboard. She gave me one little half nod, then turned her face away from me. And that was the last contact I'd had with her, though she was there, a foot away from me every day. I watched her sometimes, unable to stop myself, always from a distance though, in the cafeteria or parking lot. I watched as her golden eyes grew noticeably darker day by day. Then, abruptly, they were honey-coloured again, and the slow progression toward black would start over. That last little bit was in brackets for no reason. But in class, I gave no more notice that she existed than she showed towards me. It was miserable, and the dreams continued. She wished she hadn't pushed me out of the way of Taylor's van. I couldn't think of any other explanation. Since she obviously preferred me dead, she was pretending that I was. Sorry, I thought I missed something. Despite my outright lies, the tone of my emails got my mum worked up. She called a few times, demanding to know I was okay. I tried to convince her it was just the rain that had me down. Her husband calls a few times in a month, and he thinks that's her being frantic with worry. I don't know if I feel sad for this kid or sad for his parents. Michaela, at least, was pleased by the obvious coolness between my lab partner and me. I guess she'd been worried that the shared trauma would have bonded us or something. She got more confident, sitting on the edge of my table to talk before biology class started, ignoring Edith as completely as Edith ignored us. Sorry, the pins are sticking in. Sorry. The snow washed away for good after that one dangerously icy day. Michaela complained that she'd never gotten to stage her big snowball fight, but she was happy that the beach trip would soon be possible. The rain continued heavily, though, and the weeks passed. I hadn't really been aware of how much time was passing. Most days looked the same. Grey, green, and more grey. My stepdad had always complained that Phoenix didn't have seasons, but as far as I could tell, Forks was much worse. Sorry. Oh god, sorry. It's out of control. Here we go. I had no idea spring was anywhere near appearing until I was walking to the cafeteria with Jeremy one rainy morning. "Hey, Beau?" he asked, without giggling. I wanted to hurry out of the rain, but Jeremy was barely shuffling forward. I slowed my pace to match his. "What's up, Jeremy?" "I was just wondering if anyone's asked you to the spring dance yet. You know, it's girls' choice." "Oh, no." "Huh. Do you think Michaela will go with you?" "I hope not," I said. Maybe a little too fast. He looked up at me, surprised. "Why not?" "I don't do dances." "Oh." So far there is nothing this kid likes to do, except allegedly read books, but he wouldn't even join the library. We shuffled forward for a minute in silence. He was thoughtful. I was impatient to get out of the drizzle. "Do you mind if I tell her that?" he asked. "No, it's probably a good idea. I don't want to have to tell anyone no if I don't have to." "Okay." He's gonna steal your girl, Beau. "When's the dance again?" We were close to the cafeteria now. He pointed to a bright yellow poster advertising the dance. I'd never noticed it before, but it was curling around the edges and a little washed out, like it had been up for a while. "A week from Saturday," he said. Wow, Beau is one oblivious little dude. I was pretty sure Jeremy had already said something when the next morning Michaela was not her usual bubbly self in English. At lunch she sat away from both Jeremy and me, and she didn't say much to anyone. She stayed quiet as she walked with me to biology, but she came over like usual to sit on the edge of my table. As always, I was too aware of Edith sitting close enough to touch, but still so far away, she might as well have been a product of my imagination. "So," Michaela said, looking at the floor instead of me, "Jeremy said that you don't do dances." "Yeah, that's true." She looked at me then, her expression hurt and a little angry. I hadn't even told her no yet, and I already felt guilty. "Oh," she said, "I thought maybe he was making it up." Sorry, no. Why would he make up a story like that?" She frowned. "I think he wants me to ask him." I forced a smile. "You should. Jeremy's great." She shrugged. "Yeah, I guess." "Sorry, Jeremy." Then she took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eye with a quick, nervous smile. "Will this I don't dance thing change if I was the one asking you to go?" From the corner of my eye, I saw Edith's head suddenly tilt in my direction. Like she was listening for my answer too. It took me a little too long to respond. I still felt guilty, but mostly distracted. Was Edith listening? I'm sorry. Again. Michaela's face fell. Would it change if someone else asked you? Did Edith see how Michaela's eyes flickered in her direction? No. It's a moot point anyway. I'm going to be in Seattle that day. I needed to get out of town. 2 Saturdays from now was the perfect time to go. Does it have to be that weekend? Michaela asked. Yeah. But don't worry about me. You should take Jeremy. He's much more fun than I am. Yeah, I guess, she mumbled, and she turned to walk back to her seat. Everyone's more interesting than this dude. I mean, he's emotionally disturbed and cut off. He doesn't enjoy anything. I think he might be depressed. I watched his shoulders slump forward and I felt horrible. I closed my eyes and pushed my fingers against my temples, trying to force Michaela's dejected posture out of my head. Mrs. Banner started talking. I sighed and opened my eyes. Probably what that looked like. Edith was staring straight back at me, that familiar expression of frustration even more obvious now in her black eyes. I stared back, surprised, expecting her to look away. She didn't. Her eyes kept boring into mine like she was trying to find something really important inside them. Like a brain. I continued to stare also, totally unable to break the connection, even if I wanted to. My hands started to shake. Miss Cullen, the teacher called, looking for the answer to some question I hadn't heard. The Krebs cycle, Edith answered, seeming reluctant as she turned to look at Mrs. Banner. I put my head down, pretending to stare at my book as soon as her eyes released me. It bothered me, the rush of emotion pulsing through me just because she'd happened to look at me for the first time in 6 weeks. It wasn't normal. It was actually pretty pathetic, and probably more than that, unhealthy. It's a crush. It's not unhealthy yet. I tried hard not to be aware of her for the rest of the class, or, since that was impossible, at least not to let her know that I was aware of her. When the bell finally rang, I turned away from her to stack up my books, expecting her to rush out as usual. Beau? Beau? Her voice shouldn't sound so familiar, like I'd been hearing it all my life instead of just an hour here and there a few weeks ago. I turned slowly toward her, not wanting to feel what I knew I would feel when I looked at her too perfect face. That is, her face is too perfect. She doesn't have 2 perfect faces. It's not that kind of book. I'm sure my expression was guarded. Hers was unreadable. She didn't say anything. Yes? I asked. She just looked at me. So, are you... or are you not talking to me again? Not, she said, but her lips curled up in a smile, her dimples flashing. Okay. I turned away, down at my hands. I looked away. Turning down at your hands doesn't make sense. I looked away, down at my hands, and then over toward the chalkboard. It was hard to concentrate when I looked at her, and this conversation wasn't making much sense. I'm sorry, she said, and there was no joke in her voice now. I'm being very rude, I know, but it's better this way, really. I looked at her again. Her expression was totally serious now. That's how it looks when you're serious. I don't know what you mean. It's better if we're not friends, she explained. Trust me. My eyes narrowed. I'd heard that one before. She seemed surprised by my reaction. What are you thinking? She asked. I guess that it's too bad you didn't figure this out earlier and saved yourself the regret. Regret? My answer seemed to have caught her off guard. Regret for what? For not letting Taylor's van crush me when it had the chance? So teen. She looked completely shocked. She stared at me for a minute, wide-eyed, and when she finally spoke, she almost sounded mad. "You think I regret saving your life?" The words were quiet, just under her breath, but still pretty intense. I glanced quickly toward the front of the room where a couple of kids were still lingering. I caught one of them looking at us. He looked away and I turned back to Edith. "Yes," I said, just as quietly. "I mean, what else? Seems kind of obvious." She made the strangest sound. She exhaled through her teeth, and it was like a hiss. She still looked mad. Oh, could use that one. "You're an idiot," she told me. Well, that was my limit. It was bad enough that I was so fixated on this girl, bad enough that I thought about her all the time, dreamed about her every night. I didn't need to sit here like the moron she thought I was and just stare while she insulted me. I grabbed my books and lurched out of my chair, knowing all the while that she was right. I was an idiot, because I wanted to stay, even if all I got to hear was more abuse from her. I needed to get out of the room as fast as possible, so of course I tripped over the threshold and half fell through the doorway, my books scattering across the sidewalk. I stood there for a second with my eyes closed, thinking about leaving them. Then I sighed and bent to pick them up. Edith was there. She had already stacked them in a pile which she offered to me. I took them without really looking at her. "Thanks," I mumbled. "You're welcome," she said. Still mad, sounded like. I straightened up and hurried to Jim without looking back. Jim the place, not a person. Jim didn't make my day any better. See. We'd moved on to basketball. On the first day, even though all of them had seen me play volleyball, the other kids still seemed to think that I should be good. It didn't take them long to figure out the truth. They didn't pass me now. They never passed me now, sorry. Which was good, but with all the running I still managed to have a few accidents per game. Today was worse than yesterday because I couldn't concentrate on my feet. All I could think of was Edith. It was a relief as usual when I was finally free to leave. I couldn't wait to be back inside my truck, alone. The truck was in pretty decent shape, all things considered. I'd had to replace the taillights after the accident, but that was it. If the paint job weren't already hopeless, maybe I would have had to do something about the new scrapes. Taylor's parents had to sell her van for parts. I rounded the corner and nearly had a heart attack. Someone small and thin was leaning against the side of my truck. I skidded to a stop and then took a deep breath. It was just Erica. I started walking again. "Hey, Erica," I called. "Hi, Beau." "What's up?" I asked as I went to unlock the door. I glanced down at her and fumbled my keys. She looked really uncomfortable. I was wondering if you would go to the school dance with me." I carefully inserted the car key into the lock. Saucy. "Sorry, Erica, I'm not going to the dance." I had to look at her then. Her face was down, her black hair hiding her eyes. "Oh, okay." "Because I'm going to be in Seattle," I said quickly, trying to make her feel better. "It's the only day I can go, so, oh well. I hope it's fun and all." She glanced up from under her hair. "I guess." "Okay," she repeated, but her voice was slightly more cheerful now. "Maybe next time." "Sure," I agreed, then immediately regretted it. Hopefully she wouldn't take that too literally. "See ya," she said over her shoulder. She was already escaping. I waved, but she didn't see it. I heard a low laugh. Edith was walking past the front of my truck, looking straight forward, her mouth not betraying even the hint of a smile. I froze for a second. I wasn't prepared to be so close to her. I was used to bracing myself before biology, but this was unexpected. She kept walking. I jerked the door open and climbed in, slamming it a little too hard behind me. I revved the deafening engine twice and reversed out into the aisle. Edith was in her car already, 2 spaces down, sliding out into the lane in front of me, cutting me off. She stopped there, to wait for her family, I assumed. I could see the 4 of them walking this way, but they were still all the way back by the cafeteria. I looked in my rearview mirror. A line was beginning to form. Right behind me, Taylor Crowley was in her newly acquired used Sentra, waving. I ducked my head and pretended I couldn't see her. While I was sitting there, focusing all my efforts on not staring at the driver in front of me, I heard a knock on my passenger side window. It was Taylor. I glanced in my mirror again, confused. Her Sentra was still running, the door left open. I leaned across the cab to crank the window down. It was stiff. I got it halfway there, and then gave up. Sorry, crank, stiff, got it halfway there, then I gave up. It was funny. It sounds quite rude. Sorry, Taylor, I can't move, I'm pinned in. I gestured at the Volvo. Obviously, there was nothing I could do. Oh, I know. I just wanted to ask you something while we're trapped here, she grinned. What was it with this school? Was this some kind of practical joke? Hazing the new guy? Will you go to the spring dance with me? She asked. I'm not going to be in town, Taylor. I realized I sounded too sharp. I had to remember it wasn't Taylor's fault that Michaela and Erica had already used up my patience. Oh, you magnanimous bugger. Yeah, Michaela told me that, she admitted. Well, then why? She shrugged. I was hoping you were just letting her down easy. Okay, that was totally her fault. Sorry, Taylor, I said, not feeling nearly as bad as I had with Michaela and Erica. I'm not going to the dance. That's cool, she said, unfazed. We still have prom. Before I could say anything, she was walking back to her car. I could feel the red patches staining my face. What's wrong with him just blushing? Why does it have to be splotchy and patchy and staining and... Straight ahead, Archie, Royal, Eleanor, and Jessamine were all sliding into the Volvo. In the rearview mirror, I could see Edith's eyes staring at me. They were crinkled around the edges, and her shoulders were shaking with laughter. It was like she'd heard everything Taylor had said and found my splotchy reaction hilarious. I revved my engine, wondering how much damage it would do to the Volvo and the black car beside it if I just muscled my way through and made my escape. I was pretty sure my truck could win that fight. But they were all in, and Edith was speeding away with her nearly silent engine. I tried to concentrate on something else, anything else, as I drove home. Would Michaela ask Jeremy to the dance? Would he blame me if she didn't? Was Taylor serious about the prom? What would be my excuse for that one? Maybe I could work out a visit to my mum, or maybe she could come here. What was I going to make for dinner? We hadn't had chicken in a while. That's literally the text. But each time I finished answering my own question, my mind went right back to Edith. By the time I got home, I'd run out of new questions, so I gave up trying to think about something else. I decided to make chicken enchiladas, because it would keep me busy for a while and I didn't have that much homework. It also forced me to concentrate on all the dicing. Chicken, chilies, onions. All the while, though, I kept running through biology class again, trying to analyze every word she'd spoken to me. What did she mean it was better if we weren't friends? Just back off, Beau. Oh, here we go. My stomach dropped when I realized the only thing she could have meant. She must know how obsessed I was with her. It wasn't like I was hiding it very well. She didn't want to leave me on, so we couldn't even be friends. Because she didn't want to hurt my feelings the way I'd hurt Michaela and Erica today. Brackets. Taylor seemed fine. Edith didn't want to have to feel that guilt because she wasn't interested in me at all. Which made perfect sense, obviously, because I wasn't interesting. Again, that literally, it says it right there. My eyes were starting to sting and tear from the onions. I grabbed a dish towel, ran it under the faucet, and then rubbed it across my eyes. It didn't really help. I was boring. I knew this about myself. And Edith was the opposite of boring. This wasn't even about her secret, whatever it was, if I even remembered any of that insane moment clearly. At this point, I almost believed the story I told everyone else. It made a lot more sense than what I thought I'd seen. But she didn't need a secret to be out of my league. She was also brilliant and mysterious and beautiful and completely perfect. If she was, in fact, able to lift a full-sized van with one hand, it really didn't matter. Either way, she was fantasy, and I was the very most mundane kind of reality. And that was fine. I could leave her alone. I would leave her alone. I would get through my self-imposed sentence here in purgatory, and then hopefully some school in the southwest, possibly Hawaii, would offer me a scholarship. Oh, it's breaking my heart. I tried to think about palm trees and sun while I finished dinner. Charlie seemed worried when he came home and smelled the green peppers, but he came round after the first bite. It was kind of a strange feeling, but also a good feeling, watching as he started to trust me in the kitchen. "Dad?" I asked when he was almost done. "Yeah, Beau?" I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to Seattle a week from Saturday, just for the day. I didn't want to ask permission. It set a bad precedent. But the statement form sounded rude, so I added, if that's okay. Why? He sounded surprised, like he couldn't imagine any reason that would make someone want to leave Forks' town limits. Well, I wanted to get a few books. The library here is pretty limited. And maybe some warmer clothes. I had a little extra money since, thanks to Charlie, I hadn't had to buy a car. Though the truck did need a bigger gasoline budget than I'd expected. And the cold weather clothes I'd picked up in Phoenix seemed to have been designed by people who'd never actually lived in temperatures below 70, but had once had such a climate described to them. I'm sorry, I don't believe Beau's read any books, much less all the books in the library. I don't know if I believe he can read. That truck probably doesn't get very good gas mileage, he said, echoing my thoughts. I know, I'll stop in Montesano and Olympia, and Tacoma if I have to. Are you going away yourself? Yeah. Seattle is a big city, you could get lost, he warned. Dad, Phoenix is 5 times the size of Seattle, and I can read a map, don't worry about it. Do you want me to come with you? I wondered if he was really that worried about me, or if he just thought all the Saturdays he left me alone were adding up to neglect. Probably worried. I was sure that in his head, he still pictured me as a 5-year-old most of the time. A 5-year-old he left his mentally unstable wife with. The 5-year-old he trusted to care for his mentally unstable wife, so she could live in the community. That's not in there. It's just something I think about. That's okay. It's not going to be very exciting. I'll leave you there, Beau. Will you be back in time for the dance? I just stared back at him until he got it. It didn't take him long. Oh, right. Doesn't say he won't, but he probably did. Yeah, I said. I didn't get my balance issues from my mom. The next morning at school, I parked as far as possible from the shiny silver Volvo. I would keep my distance. I wouldn't notice her anymore. She'd have nothing to complain about from here on out. As I slammed the truck door shut, I lost my hold on the key and it splashed down in a puddle at my feet. As I bent to retrieve it, a pale hand flashed out and grabbed it first. I jerked upright, almost smacking my head into her. Edith Cullen was right there, leaning casually against my truck. "How do you do that?" I gasped. "How do you do that?" Shouldn't have done that. "Do what?" She held my key out while she spoke. As I reached for it, she dropped it in my palm. A period of thin air. Oh, it's not my fault if you are exceptionally unobservant. Exceptionally unobservant. Her voice was just a murmur, muted velvet, and her lips were holding back a smile, like she thought I was hilarious. How was I supposed to ignore her when she wouldn't ignore me? That was what she wanted, right? Me out of her long, bronzy hair. Wasn't that what she said to me yesterday? We couldn't be friends. Then why was she talking to me? Was she sadistic? Was this her idea of fun? torture that idiotic kid she could never possibly care about? I stared at her, frustrated. Her eyes were light again today, a deep, golden honey colour. My thoughts got confused, and I had to look down. Her feet were just a half-foot from mine, oriented toward me, unmoving, like she was waiting for a response. I looked past her, toward the school, and said the first dumb things that came into my mind. Why the traffic jam last night? I thought you were supposed to be pretending I don't exist. Ah, that was for Taylor's sake. She was figuratively dying for her chance at you. I blinked. What? Irritation from yesterday's memory bled into my voice. I hadn't thought Edith and Taylor were friends. Did Taylor ask her? That didn't seem likely. And I'm not pretending you don't exist, she continued like I hadn't spoken. I met her eyes again, trying to keep my mind focused, no matter how golden they seemed, or how long her lashes were against her pale violet lids. I don't know what you want from me, I told her. It was annoying how my thoughts seemed to explode straight through my lips when I was near her, like I had no filter at all. I would never have spoken this way to another girl. The amused half-smile disappeared, and her face was suddenly guarded. By Rottweilers! No, doesn't say. Nothing, she said too quickly, almost like she was lying. Then you probably should have let the van take me out. Easier that way. She stared for a second, and when she answered, her voice was cold. Beau, you are utterly absurd. I must be right about the torture thing. I was just a way for her to pass time in this boring town. An easy mark. I was past her in one long stride. Wait, she said, but I forced myself to keep moving, not to look back. I'm sorry, that was rude, she said, somehow right next to me, keeping pace that my legs were probably twice as long as hers. I'm not saying it wasn't true, but it was rude to say it out loud. Why won't you leave me alone? I wanted to ask you something, but you sidetracked me. I sighed and slowed, though she didn't seem like she was having a hard time keeping up. Fine. I was such a sucker. What do you want? I was wondering if a week from Saturday, day of the spring dance. I stopped, wheeling down to look at her. Wheeling to look down at her. That makes more sense. Is this funny to you? Good question. She stared up at me, seeming oblivious to the drizzling rain that was falling. She was apparently wearing no makeup at all. Nothing smudged or ran. Of course, her face was just that perfect naturally. For a second I was actually angry. Angry that she had to be so beautiful. Angry that her beauty had made her cruel. Angry that I was the object of her cruelty. And even though I knew it, I still couldn't successfully walk away from her. Her amused expression was back, the hint of dimples threatening on her cheeks. Will you please allow me to finish? She asked. Walk away, I told myself. I didn't move. I heard that you were going to Seattle that day, and I wondered if you wanted a ride. That was not what I was expecting. Huh? Do you want to ride to Seattle? I wasn't sure where her joke was heading now. With who? Myself. Obviously. She enunciated every syllable, like she thought maybe English wasn't my first language. Why? Where was the punchline? Well, I was planning to go to Seattle in the next few weeks, and to be honest, I'm not sure if your truck can make it. Finally, I was about to start walking again, goaded by the insult to my truck. Make fun of me all you want, but leave the truck out of it, I said. That's a good line. Well done, Beau. That's good. Again, she kept up easily. Why would you think I'm making fun of you? She said. The invitation is genuine. My truck is great, thanks. Can your truck make it to Seattle on one tank of gas? Before the truck, I'd never cared one way or another about any car, but I could feel a prejudice against Volvos forming. I don't see how that's your problem. The wasting of finite resources is everyone's problem, she said primly. Seriously, Edith. I felt a charge go through me as I said her name aloud, and I didn't like it. I can't keep up with you. I thought you didn't want to be my friend. I said it would be better if we weren't friends, not that I didn't want to be. Oh wow, great, so that's all cleared up. Thick sarcasm. I realized I had stopped walking again. I looked down at her rain-washed face, clean and perfect, and my thoughts stuttered to a halt. It would be more prudent for you not to be my friend, she explained. But I'm tired of trying to stay away from you, Beau. There was no humour in her face now. Her eyes were intense, narrowed, the long lines of her lashes stark black against her skin. Her voice had a strange heat to it. I couldn't remember how to breathe. Will you accept a ride with me to Seattle? She demanded, voice still burning. Sorry, I thought I said eyes burning. I don't know how to make my voice burn. I couldn't speak, so I just nodded. A quick smile reshaped her face, then she was serious again. You really should stay away from me, she warned. I'll see you in class. She spun on her heel and then walked quickly back the way they'd come. The way we'd come. Didn't just change into third person. And that is the end of chapter 4. Chapter 5, Blood Type, will be coming up later on when I've had a chance to have a throaties. And hope you're still enjoying it. Thank you. Bye.